This is Cornstalks and Sports Talk, your go-to Iowa-based sports show, hosted by the one and only Eliot Clough.
This podcast is sponsored by Cloud Optimizer.
As a business owner or IT manager, are your cloud investment costs going up and you don't know why? It's time for Cloud Optimizer. As you migrate your business to the cloud, what you're spending and why you're spending it can get a little hazy. But Cloud Optimizer clears up the mystery and puts the cloud to work for you. Cloud Optimizer starts by analyzing usage patterns, right-sizing resources, leveraging discounts you may not be aware of, implementing automation, and much more. And by reducing unnecessary expenses and maximizing performance, Cloud Optimizer guarantees you a savings of 5 times what you spend for their service. As you utilize cloud-based services more and more, you don't have to lose sight or control of your spend. You can stay agile, streamline your costs, and optimize your performance, plus save significant money with Cloud Optimizer.
Make the cloud work for you with Cloud Optimizer. Get a free assessment and find out how much you can save by going to cloudoptimizer.com. Go to cloudoptimizer.com for your free assessment. That's cloudoptimizer.com.
What's up, Cedar Valley, and hello to the Hawkeye State. This is Cornstalks and Sports Talk, your Iowa-based sports show here on your podcasting platform. It's a habit I can't break. My name's Eliot, Eliot Clough, at Eliot Clough on Twitter. I'm a UNI insider for Town Square Media. Thanks so much for hopping on today, wherever you're listening, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, the KOEL app, KCRR app, whatever app that you have from Town Square Media. And then, of course, if you're watching on YouTube, we appreciate you tuning in. I will get last Saturday's first 15 minutes on as well. We're going to start doing that here soon. Also, something to remember here on Cornstalks and Sports Talk is to leave that rate and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play. Leave that subscribe, and follow us wherever we're at as well. Drop a like, drop a comment on YouTube. It's greatly appreciated, especially with the Iowa-based content we got here. We want to get that out to as many people as possible. So today, believe it or not, on this solo show that I'm doing, going to talk a little bit more Iowa, University of Iowa to be exact, to start. The Hawkeyes, what's going on with them, their football program, and more. Of course, we'll get to a little bit of UNI too, because that is my bread and butter as a UNI insider. Eliot Clough here with you on Cornstalks and Sports Talk. So I want to start with this, is that there's been loads of talk about Iowa's offense this season, right? Like, even recently on this 3-game win streak, it's still bad. Like, it's not good. They've done better. They've scored points, and there's been times where Caleb Johnson and LaShawn Williams look great, more so Caleb Johnson. But the offense has been such a focal point this season that even with a generational defense like Phil Parker has put together, that it can be overshadowed because of how just putrid the offense has been. Again, it's been better. Petrus has looked like he's gotten something figured out mentally to a degree. Obviously, there are some issues still. Sam Laporta is still, he deserves to be a top 3 round pick, in my opinion, maybe even top 2 round pick. He's the next of the next iteration of a great Iowa tight end, if you will. And so I really like what he's doing this season. Again, to the defense. So Phil Parker is the defensive coordinator at Iowa, for those of you unaware. He's done a phenomenal job. He's the defensive back whisperer, if you will, and he's been nominated for the 2022 Broyles Award, which goes to the top assistant in the country. And this is where I want to go in regards to what we're talking about on this first sort of segment, is that Phil Parker is a damn genius, to say the least. He's a great coach. The consistent level, high-level defense that he puts together in Iowa City every year, which is not necessarily, a destination for kids to play college football unless you live in the state of Iowa, it's incredible. They're bringing in guys like Cooper DeJean, who I've talked about quite a bit as the guy who went to the same high school that I did, and he was phenomenal this last week. Returning punts, he had that pick 6. He was all over the field in terms of tackling. I'm just a really big fan of his. But taking a guy like that who is a 3-star recruit out of Ida Grove, Iowa, Otobote, Iowa, I guess is technically where he's from, and molding him into this, I mean, he was already an incredible athlete, but taking guys like that and putting them on the field and making one of the greatest defenses in the country. Here's a stat for you. Iowa's defense has scored 28 points this season, 24 points technically off touchdowns, but 28 points total from touchdowns with the extra points, right? 2 of which have come from those Cooper DeJean pick sixes. And that's the second most in the country. The second most in the country in terms of total points. But that's 28, again, technically with the touchdowns and the field goal, or in the PATs, but the touchdowns and the safeties, it's 28 points. So they've actually put together 28 points themselves this season, which is the second most in the country. Then if you tack on the extra points, the safeties, the touchdowns, it's 32 total points. Granted, again, special teams with BATs, but whatever. Those two safeties against South Dakota State, and it's 28 points total from the Hawkeyes defensively. Additionally, they allow the fewest yards per play, which is 3.8 in the country, which is the lowest since Alabama in 2011. For those of you unaware of what that team had at Alabama in 2011, it was Courtney Upshaw, HaHa Clinton-Dix, Dre Kirkpatrick, C.J. Mosley, and Dante Hightower. All I got to say is Dante Hightower and C.J. Mosley, and you know the interior of that defense was really good. And Dre Kirkpatrick might not have been what some people wanted him to be in the NFL, but he was still a pretty solid player. And then, of course, Courtney Upshaw, kind of the same thing. HaHa Clinton-Dix was a staple for several defenses while he was in the NFL, the Packers, and of course the Bears, and he was really good at Alabama. But those are some pretty freaking solid statistics, if you ask me. It's indicative of how good of a coach he is and what he's done with these defenses. And I mean, the Hawkeyes, okay, here we go. The Hawkeyes defense has held 7 opponents to 10 points or less this season. They still only have 6 wins, which is pretty indicative of the offense, including 3 with 3 or fewer points, which is insane. It is the first time since 1991 that the defense has held 7 opponents under 10 points. That team finished 10-1-1 and played in the Holiday Bowl. Since the start of the 2017 season, the Hawkeyes defense has intercepted 101 passes, which is the most in the country. They're the only team to cross the 100 interception mark. That is bonkers. Bonkers. And Phil Parker getting some of the recognition he deserves. If he doesn't win this award, I didn't look at the list of who else is on it, but if he doesn't win that award, I think that the award is irrelevant. That's all I'm going to say, because if Phil Parker doesn't win it, who the hell is going to win that award? Now, on to the impact of this is something I want to talk about for sure here, as well as that it's really good to have Iowa's defense recognized for what they're doing, because of how awful the offense has been. And so with what comes along with that is the fact that somebody has to look at Phil Parker. Again, I don't know what he's like personality-wise. I don't know if he would even consider even fathom being the head coach of any football team right now. But, I mean, somebody has to look at that and think, maybe we want him to lead our defense and our team. Maybe we want him to be our guy. And what you have to consider that, first of all, as Kirk Ferentz. You have to. Like, Phil Parker, one of the best defensive coordinators, if not the best defensive coordinator in the country. There are going to be other programs, other teams that are going to say, look, we'll pay you more than what Iowa's paying you. And, I mean, there just has to be some level of awareness regarding how good he is at his job, and the fact that other teams are going to see that and be like, oh, yeah, we want that guy. So, with that said, you have to, I mean, it's all the more reason to get rid of Brian Ferentz. in my opinion, because as Phil Parker is showing up every season knowing I'm going to have a top 10 defense, one of the best defenses in the country, and the offense is going to be putrid because that frickin' guy, your son, is leading the offense. Nepotism at its finest. Does that not make... I mean, that would make me think, what am I doing here? Like, I realize that I'm putting together these fantastic defenses, and I'm not getting in anything in return from the offense. Get rid of that frickin' guy. He's not good at his job. That has to be taken into consideration. And I mean, like, I get it. Like, Iowa's won 3 in a row. Heck, they might end up back in the Big Ten championship game because of how good their defense is. And if Kirk Ferentz uses that in 2023 and says, I don't know if you know this, but we won 8 games last year. Well, imagine how many you could have won if your offense was freaking competent. Like, remotely competent. I'll tell you what, they won 3 games in a row, and it wasn't even good. Like, it was better. It was better. And to have it be that bad and people be happy about it is indicative as to how bad it was. I mean, anyway, speaking of which, Iowa is on a roll right now. They have won 3 in a row after getting absolutely throttled by Ohio State, just dismantled by the Buckeyes. And so, with that said, I mean, don't look now. You know, they beat, okay, Northwestern, right? Like, granted, Northwestern gave Ohio State kind of a hard time this last game they played each other, but Northwestern. And then they beat Purdue, who has kind of had their number, beat them last year when they were the number 2 team in the country. Is it Aiden O'Donnell? McDonald? I don't remember. Quarterback for Purdue. He's pretty good. And the game plan was really get the ball to Charlie Jones and hope he makes a play. And, well, it didn't really work. I mean, the Iowa offense was phenomenal. Caleb Johnson was freaking great. Like, I think that's really the game that people have been waiting to see from Caleb Johnson. Like, he really showed out and showed what he's capable of. The offensive line looked good. And in that game specifically, not against Wisconsin. But they did beat Wisconsin too. So Purdue and Wisconsin, relevant, you know? I mean, they're not good, you know, they're not great. They're not top 25 programs. Wisconsin isn't as good as they've been traditionally. But they're still Wisconsin, you know, and they really brought pressure to Spencer Petras. Oh my gosh, it was like every third down play, if not, you know, more than that. Every snap they were coming after him. Every snap. Like, I don't even know how you combat that with how bad the offensive line was. And that's just another reason to get rid of Brian Ferentz, you know, like, do the dump off passes, run a screen, run the ball up the middle, do a delayed handoff, a delayed handoff up the middle. You know, I mean, something different, and they were just coming after him. And truth be told, like, a decent offense scores a lot of points on that Wisconsin defense based on what they were doing this last weekend, because you can't. It's Madden, right? You can't send engage 8 every play and expect it to result in something positive for you every time. Like, on occasion, yeah, you send the blitz to scare your opponent to get to the quarterback when you know it's a passing down, maybe. But then you run a screen. Then you run a short crosser over the middle. Your guy goes and makes a play. And it was better. Again, Spencer Petras was better. Like, he actually found Sam Laporta a few times. And so I think that the offense is improving, and it's good enough right now for them to win these final 2 games against Minnesota and against Nebraska, which is not saying a lot. I mean, Minnesota's fine. Yeah, Minnesota's fine, but Nebraska's terrible. They gotta beat the brakes off Nebraska, in my opinion, just like in general. Not for any particular reason, like in actual gameplay or how things shake out in the future. They just need to beat the brakes off Nebraska. Anyway, these last 3 games, they've won by 14 or more points, which is really good. I just really don't want this to be the thing that Kirk Ferentz turns back to and says, this is why I'm not firing my son, you know, or my offensive coordinator because they want to be professional, whatever. Whoever the Hawks end up playing, though, in the Big Ten championship, boy, it's going to be Michigan or Ohio State, right? Like, there's no other option. And it's going to be brutal. Like, even last year's team, like, the defenses, again, it's going to be good. They did kind of compete with Michigan. They didn't have anything against Ohio State. It'll be at a neutral site, right? Indianapolis. But it's going to be ugly in the Big Ten championship game. Yeah, it's good to make it there, but what I foresee happening is they win these next two games. They end up in the Big Ten championship game, especially if Illinois, falls off. I don't know what their schedule looks like, but if the Fighting Illini fall off, Iowa's definitely going to make it to the Big Ten championship game, and then they're just going to get dismantled by Michigan or Ohio State. That's what I predict. And again, if Coach Ferentz uses this 5-game win streak after starting 3-4, and then playing 5 unranked teams who, they might have some history like a Wisconsin, but they're not just generally good. If he uses that and brings back Brian Ferentz, I don't even know what I would say or how I would react to that, because that's it's insulting the way it was handled this season, but then to do it again next season, just bring in somebody, man. Bring in a D3 offensive coordinator who lit it up this season, and that's better than Brian Ferentz. I'm telling you that right now.
This is the story of the one. As a maintenance engineer, he hears things differently. To the untrained ear, everything on his shop floor might sound fine, but he can hear gears grinding or a belt slipping. So he steps in to fix the problem at hand before it gets out of hand. And he knows Grainger's got the right product he needs to get the job done, which is music to his ears. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Anyway, speaking of which, the impact of the awfulness, the terribility, the how bad Brian Ferentz has been at Iowa this season. Speaking of which, Kadyn Proctor, 5-star recruit from Southeast Polk, who had announced that he's staying home, that he's committed to playing at Iowa, went on an official visit to Oregon this weekend. And I think it wasn't a collective, but part of the fan base was like, what the hell? What's going on here? And then Oregon lost to Washington, which people in the Iowa fan base definitely appreciated. But I'm going to address it shortly just because I don't know enough about Proctor. I've never interviewed him. I've never talked to him. I don't know enough necessarily even about the Iowa program and how they're handling this continued recruitment of Proctor and keeping him on until he officially signs his letter of intent to play at Iowa. There's a couple things that I see in this scenario in different ways you can take this moment, right? What Proctor's doing, what he's doing. And as an individual who likes to look at situations and say, it's not about what happened, it's about how I respond to it, I generally tend to lean positive. Even after, you might not believe it after all the rants I've gone on about the Iowa offense and Brian Ferentz, but I do tend to lean positive, and we'll get to that in a moment. What the two things are, I'll talk the negative first, because you always bring the negative first. You bring the bad news before the good news. It's that just a few weeks ago, Sean Bach of Hawkeye Insider 24/7 Sports, he was on this last weekend's episode talking about Iowa basketball recruiting, if you want to go listen to that once this one's done. He said that thousands, I think if I remember correctly, Proctor had received thousands of text messages from coaches that were still trying to recruit him, and he just hadn't opened them because he was so committed to Iowa. This was a couple weeks ago, a month or two ago. So what changed? What flipped in his desire to visit Oregon now, go on an official visit to Oregon now? I mean, it happens. These guys flip these commitments, especially now more than ever. I mean, UNI's been the beneficiary of one, more recently Grant Larkin, and then in basketball, Wes Rubin. So it's not out of the question. It's not completely out of bounds to say it could happen. I mean, there's never a 100% guarantee until a guy signs a letter of intent, right? I mean, it's just another reason for Kirk to fire Brian. They already have that issue that they already had that Florida running back Rayfield decommit, the 4-star running back he decommitted, He never gave a reason why, but you have to assume it's because Brian Ferentz is terrible and their offense is terrible. You have to assume that. Like, it just added up and added up and added up, and ultimately he decommitted. So it has to be factored as a possibility because of how bad the Iowa offense has been, because it's Oregon, one of the top programs and top brands in college football, where Proctor could make a lot of money, but he's also said it's not about the money. So take it as you will, but that's the negative of it being a possibility of look at Oregon's brand, man, and look at their offense, man, and they've turned out a bunch of offensive linemen too, man. It could be cool to go there. Oregon's a different place than I've been before. So take that as you will. The second thing is that Proctor could see this as, I'm taking an official visit because I can. That's not necessarily the greatest look for him to take an official visit and go to these places where they're, paying for his food, paying for his flight, paying for his hotel. I mean, it happens, right? This isn't an indictment of Kadyn Proctor's character, I promise. He just did this at Arkansas State before he committed. You think he was going to go to Arkansas State? I don't. He's taken official visits at different schools. I mean, it's an opportunity for him to see different parts of the country that maybe he wouldn't otherwise see. Go with his family, check it out, see the program, see the facilities. Man, this is cool. Okay, I'm going to go back to Iowa. That's certainly a possibility. And also throw on top of the fact that, with these guys who I've mentioned from UNI who have decommitted from their previous schools, Wes Rubin and Grant Larkin. Again, Wes Rubin basketball, Grant Larkin football. It'd be quite different if Kadyn Proctor decommitted and chose a different school, let alone Oregon instead of Iowa. If he had initially committed to Alabama, to Oregon, to Florida, and said, you know what, I want to stay home, I'm going to go to Iowa, that would be much better for him in the long term as opposed to what the opposite would be, which would be going to choosing Iowa, committing to Iowa, verbally committing to Iowa, decommitting, and then going to Oregon. The ramifications of those actions for guys like Grant Larkin, for Wes Rubin, while valid, you could be worried about that, hate it, and I totally get it. If I were in a situation like that, I would not want to decommit because that would just feel wrong. And you could still get pushback from fan bases, but to be a 5-star recruit, a top 10 player in the country, a guy who chose to stay in his home state, and then flip it last second, that would not be good. And I think Proctor's smart enough to recognize that. And he's just been all Iowa, and then there was this flip and decision to visit Oregon officially. So there's a couple different ways to take it. I lean the direction of, yeah, he's probably taking a visit to check it out, and good for him. He hasn't signed a letter of intent. He's not doing anything that's going to affect his eligibility as a college football player. He's not doing anything illegal. He's not doing anything objectively wrong. He's doing things that are within his realm of what he can do before he decides where he's going to go to college. And he has the right to do that. People have the right to freak out too, but he has the right to do that as a young man and as a guy with an incredible opportunity that 99% of us don't have. So, I will leave it at that. Now, let's keep talking football here. I have seen a ton, and you have likely seen a ton of offers given by the UNI coaching staff to JUCO football players recently. Not so much high school ones. And the way I see that coming up on my feed, granted I get notifications too, and I'm sure you see the tweets from me, but Ethan Petrick is all over that. The guy from Waterloo, Cedar Falls Courier, he gets those tweets and pumps them out right away. So a lot of times the first time I see him is when he tweets them, but try to get his information, as much information as possible, and share it. And if I beat him to it, I beat him to it. He still tweets stuff out. So if you want to follow along with that really closely, Ethan does a great job of that. Again, he's been a guest here on Corn Stalks and Sports Talk. Happy to promote what he does because he does great stuff, and we're all on the same side. So anyway, lots of JUCO offers. Lots of JUCO offers. And I saw one person, I don't think anybody else particularly was worried about that or trying to come up with any theory or maybe just make sense of it. But lots of the comment was something like, does he feel like he's on the hot seat? Does he feel like he has to make an impact before he leaves? And no, like that's not Coach Farley. One. Number two, he's not on the hot seat. Coach Farley would have to do a lot to get on the hot seat. Like these 6-6 seasons in the MVFC, they're like he's still beating really good teams. They are still in the playoff hunt. Like it'd have to be a couple seasons in a row for him to get booted, especially with the amount of time that he's spent in Cedar Falls on the staff and being an alum for that matter. But the way that first of all, that's just not the case. He's just not going to get fired. He's not going to leave. He's not going to quit. He's not going to retire anytime soon, as far as I know. He's still kicking. He might be getting up there in age, but he's still kicking and he still loves what he does. So with that said, there's a lot of really talented guys at the JUCO level. There's a lot of really talented guys. And maybe it feels like there are more offers right now to these JUCO kids. One, because their season's coming to an end. A lot of these high school players have figured out where they're going to go. And UNI might want to add. They have a few offers left on the table, taking a shot on a few JUCO guys where they feel like they can come in and make an impact. Maybe not even right away, but guys who they think they can continue to build and mold to what they want, and they can come in and play for the Panthers. But additionally, on top of the fact that might be the case, where they want to go get some of these JUCO guys after, filtering what they could out of the high school class and seeing what they wanted. These JUCO guys also have experience, but they also have an extra year of COVID eligibility. So they can come in instead of having 2 years left, 3 years left, 4 years. I mean, they could have 3 years or 4 years left. I mean, Spencer Cuvalier, he's on his fourth year at UNI, and he spent 3 years at Iowa Central. So there you go. And I mean, you have to consider the fact, too, that some of these guys at the JUCO level went there because they didn't have good enough grades to go to bigger programs. And that's just a fact of college football, college basketball, track, etc. Some of these guys go to JUCO because they might not have the offers, they might not have the looks, and JUCO is the only place that gave them a scholarship offer, or they want to save some money, and then they develop into a D1 player. But a lot of these guys, it's not the case. They're D1 material, they don't have the grades. So, no, a lot of these bigger programs don't really look JUCO too. A lot of the big FBS programs don't look at JUCO unless you are outrageous, because they want to bring in these guys who are going to have the ability to compete right away, and they're going to have more time to be molded by the staff and the program at the school, like a Penn State, like an Ohio State, like Iowa. And it does happen. I mean, it just doesn't happen super frequently. It just doesn't. But you have to, in the grand scheme of things, you have to look at what UNI has gotten from the JUCO level and guys that have come in and impacted what UNI wants to do. I mean, right now on this team, Spencer Cuvalier, that's an easy one, who I just mentioned, from Iowa Central. And then you go to Matt Morrissey from Trinity Valley Community College, who, once Theo's gone, he's probably going to be the starter. And then Devin Foster, who made that play against Utah Tech. He put his helmet on the guy's on the football, and the guy fumbled it. UNI picked it up, and I don't think they scored. I think that was just the end of the game, but if I remember correctly. But Foster's going to play sooner rather than later. He's a talented guy. He's a good guy. He went from receiver to defensive back, so he's had to learn some of those things, but he has the athleticism to really play multiple positions. I really like Devin Foster, and I think he's going to be good for this football team here soon enough. And I mean, even in the past, you look at Roosevelt Lawrence, who was on that 2019, I think he was on the 2019 team. He was at corner, if I remember correctly, out there with like Xavier Williams and those guys. And Lawrence was pretty solid, a little undersized, but he was solid. He's from Iowa Central as well. Tim Butcher from Iowa Central, and then Colton Howell, who had some time playing at the quarterback position in exchange with Eli Dunn as well. He was from Butler Community College. So the JUCO thing, that kind of explains it, right? It's the grades. It's the fact that they have more eligibility. It's maybe the fact that UNI may have just missed out on some high school kids, or they got what they wanted out of the high school class, and now they want some guys with some more experience. And they're offering some really talented players out there. I mean, like, forgive me, the linebacker, he was number 47 when he was at UNI. Riley Van Wy. His younger brother's at Iowa Central right now. He just got an offer from Iowa State. So, well, I'm sure those offers are continuing to roll in, and some of these guys that UNI has offered are going to continue to get offers as well. And we'll see. I mean, there are a good amount of seniors on this football team that are going to be gone. I mean, Benny Sapp's going to be gone. Corby Sanders is going to be gone. Spencer Cuvalier is going to be gone. Bryce Flater is going to be gone. Dom Williams is going to be gone. Quan Hampton's going to be gone. Some of the offensive linemen are going to be gone. You got to go out and you got to try to make plays and you know, not just on the field. Go out and get some talented guys that can come in. They've been playing for 2 years. They've been in the weight room. They've matured a little bit more than some of these young guys who are coming out of high school, and they can compete for jobs. So why not go after them? That's my 2 cents. On to UNI men's basketball. They're back at it next week, the 21st, in the Hall of Fame Classic in Kansas City. This is after the shooting that happened this weekend in Charlottesville. UNI was supposed to play number 18, Virginia, and that was canceled after the shooting. 3 football players, Devin Chandler, Lavelle Davis Jr., and Deshaun Perry for Virginia, were shot and killed. And we've talked a little bit about gun violence before here on Corn Stalks and Sports Talk, and I have no necessary agenda. I don't necessarily have an agenda on that. I support the Second Amendment, but something's got to change here. And if you want to hear more on that, I talked about the Ames tragedy that happened this summer. And that was about the extent I want to go into that. I'm not going to say the name of the shooter. He will not get a platform from me. He does not deserve it, nor will he ever. And I hope that he rots in prison for the rest of his life. So that game against against Richmond this last week, the guys are going to have about 10 days off from that game. And they did lose that one, their first D1 competition of the year. A few things that were able to be taken away from that game. Coach Jake did a really good job of talking on, you know, the radio after the game. Of course, we don't get necessarily media availability. Sometimes he just wants to get the guys and get out, which is understandable. So I listened to the radio and listened to what he had to say, what JW had to say. JW Cox, who has done a phenomenal job as the play-by-play guy for UNI so far this season. You heard him on Corn Stalks this summer when he got hired. Great guy, really big fan of JW. But some of the things that Coach Jake hit, defense it's just right now, and defense and offense for that matter, it's just going to not be up to where we've seen it more recently, with all the veterans that have been on this team. Trey Burhow, Tywan Pickford, again, Austin Fife, still waiting on him to come back. Of course, AJ Green, Noah Carter no longer around. This team lost a lot. Antoine Kimmons as well. So this team is really lacking in experience, but they're also lacking in height, especially without Austin Fife, especially with Cole Henry, who's coming off that right ankle, or left ankle? An ankle injury. He's coming off an ankle injury and didn't play much against Richmond. So, and you know, it's the height for Cole that he brings defensively that you really want from him. But the lack of height, the drop-off in experience, and the lack of chemistry just for the sheer fact that they haven't played a lot of minutes together. That's just what you're going to get against a good Richmond team. A good Richmond team, a true freshman, came in and scored 21 points. Roach, who lit it up from deep, 4 3-pointers. This was just definitely one of those games where Austin Fife would help dramatically on the floor for a lot of reasons. Like I mentioned, experience. He's a guy also who can just go get you a bucket. You drop it in there when he's healthy and he can function and he can be on the court. He's this guy that's going to get you a bucket. It's added height defensively against a team that had a 7-foot guy. I mean, and he's just such a massive piece as to what they needed this season in leadership and a big. I mean, you got the guard play. You got Nate. You got Bowen. You got the versatility in Titan Anderson. And then you kind of fill in those spots with some of the young guys. And then there's your key piece in Austin Fife. Austin and Bowen really be those two guys, along with the experience and the versatility of Nate and Titan. But you don't have that. You don't have Austin Fife right now. And, there's a reason they went into the portal to try to get another big. This last summer, I don't know if you remember that, they went after that big from Dayton, unable to bring him in. He ended up at North Texas. And granted, it didn't happen. And as far as I know, they didn't go after another big. They just saw this guy with 3 years of experience, a big dude, 3 years of eligibility left, played at Dayton a little bit, not a lot, but was at Dayton and had some time left to play and could have very well stepped into a role of Austin Fife, but ended up somewhere else. And they didn't go after another big, as far as I know. They only went after one guard, that D2 kid who ended up at Elon? Colgate. He ended up at Colgate. And so transfer portal isn't really Coach Jake's thing. He'll do it, he'll use it, but it's not a cornerstone of the program, And so having that transfer portal guy would have been great, but right now what this team needs is an Austin Fife. They need that guy who's been around for, I think he's been around for 7 years. 7 years. 6 years? 6 years. 6 years. Anyway, been around for a long time. And he's a guy that, again, it's the experience, it's the height, it's the ability to go get you a bucket when the offense isn't going. He's just so great to have for this team, and to have him back, hopefully around Christmas time, will be drastic. Anyway, drastically important. Anyway, these 10 days for these guys should be really good. 10 days for this basketball team should be very beneficial. It's 10 days to get Cole Henry healthy. It's 10 days to get some really good coaching in. 10 days to learn more for the young guys. And 10 days to make mistakes in practice when they don't necessarily matter on the court. It's an opportunity to learn, opportunity to grow, opportunity to get better. So once again, folks, my name is Eliot Clough, at Eliot Clough on Twitter. I'm a UNI insider for Town Square Media. This was another episode of Cornstalks and Sports Talk. Before you go, please subscribe, leave a rate and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play. Drop a comment on YouTube. Words are hard sometimes. And again, we had that spike in rates and reviews and subscriptions and follows on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and our downloads went up drastically. So if you would do that, gosh, it helps us out. Make sure you don't miss an episode as well to really stay in the know here in Iowa on Iowa sports, because this is your Iowa-based sports show. Once again, folks, my name is Eliot Clough, at Eliot Clough on Twitter. I'm a UNI insider for Town Square Media, and this was another episode of Cornstalks and Sports Talk.